Welcome to part 3 of the ATACC series. In this video, we will go over how to operate ATACC and how to use the web panel. If you haven't connected your ATACC unit to Wi-Fi, I recommend you watch part 2 of the series, where we did that. Starting with the touchscreen, there are 3 gauges. The first gauge shows the real-time temperature of the thermal probe. The second gauge shows the target temperature. This is the temperature ATACC will try and aim for. The final gauge is the flow gauge. This displays how much water is flowing through the unit. Below the gauges, there are 3 buttons. The plus and minus buttons, when clicked, will raise or lower the target temp in increments of 0.5. The middle button will have either a green letter A or a red letter M. The green A means the device is in automatic mode. In this mode, ATACC will automatically regulate itself based on the given target temperature. If there is a red M, it means the device is in manual mode. In this mode, the middle gauge is replaced from a target temperature gauge to a target flow gauge. When in this mode, the plus and minus buttons will add or subtract from the target flow in increments of 0.2. ATACC will only regulate based on flow and not temperature when in manual mode. Click the button to toggle between the 2 modes. On the top of the screen are 3 indicators. The first indicator indicates the device status. If it is red, it means the device is in standby mode. When in standby mode, the device will have a low flow rate and will sit dormant, waiting for the still to begin boiling. Once it detects a temperature increase, it will wake up and become active. When active, it will be green. This indicates that it will begin regulating based on what the user has set for either automatic or manual mode. If the indicator is purple, it means the device is updating itself. Never power off the unit if it's updating, as it can damage the unit. The second indicator is a red circle that will appear here. This only appears if the device checks for a software update and gets no reply from the server. Possible causes of this is if ATACC has no internet connection on the network, a firewall is blocking it, or if the update server here at MIG Dynamics is down. ATACC does not need connection to the update server to function. All it does is allow the user to update their unit to get access to the latest and greatest features available. The final indicator is a red square located in the top left corner of the screen. It functions as a button you can click to disable all form of flow and regulation control from ATACC. This is useful if you ever need to have ATACC turned on while the water supply is unplugged or turned off, as normally ATACC constantly needs at least a little bit of water at all times, or else it will trigger an emergency shutdown. If the square is red, it means flow regulation is turned off. If the square is black or appears invisible, it means it is not disabled and is operating normally. That is it for the controls on the touchscreen. Everything past this, we will focus on the web interface. This is where you get the ability to remotely monitor ATACC, modify its behavior, and make it perform tailor-made just for your specific setup. To get started, you simply need to type the address located on the touchscreen into any web browser. Note, you will not get an address unless ATACC is connected to Wi-Fi. Once the address is typed in, you will be prompted to log in. The default username is admin, and the default password is 1 through 8. Once logged in, you will have free reign over the web panel. The first thing you will see is a copy of the buttons and gauge cluster found on the touchscreen on the unit. These function identically. On the top of the screen, there is also an uptime timer and a status indicator. Uptime timer just counts how long ATACC has been powered on for. The status indicator shows if the device is in standby mode, active mode, or updating. Same indicator as on the touchscreen. Finally, there are 2 graphs that tracks the flow and temperature. These give you an added level of information in how your distillation performs. This is critical information if you are custom tuning your settings. You can click these buttons to show or hide their respective data type on the graphs. Scrolling down, you will see the Settings tab. These 2 buttons will be covered in a later video and will not function without their respective hardware add-ons. Next is the Stats button. This grants you access to some additional information. The Update Firmware button will check if an update is available. If one is available, it will display there is a new update. If you click the button again, it will automatically download and install the update. The Change Password button will allow you to set a new password for logging into the web interface. The factory reset button will reset all the settings, passwords, and information on the device back to its default settings. If you ever need to factory reset your device but cannot access the web panel, you can factory reset your unit using just the touchscreen. To do this, you must first touch the red square to disable flow control, then set the target temperature to exactly 25, then switch to manual mode and change the target flow also to 25. Finally, reboot your device and it will factory reset itself. Finally, we move on to Expert Settings. Clicking this button will show the Expert Settings tab. This will give you access to a new tab where you can custom tune ATACC for your specific distillation setup. Upon entering the Expert Settings tab, you will see a large amount of configurable parameters. These are meant for experienced distillers only. Incorrectly setting these parameters can cause the temperature regulation to fail and have your still reach dangerously high or low temperatures. Starting from top to bottom, here is what each setting does. The toggle motor control is how you remotely enable or disable flow control for ATACC. This is the web panel version of the red square on the top left of the touchscreen. The default flow is the flow rate that ATACC will regulate itself to when the device is in standby mode. This should be a relatively small amount as ATACC isn't regulating the temperature yet. It's simply waiting for the still to start boiling. The wake-up temperature is the threshold that once it's hit, ATACC will come out of standby mode and go into active mode where it starts regulating temperature. This is just a limit that once hit, it will let ATACC know that the still is ready. The minimum flow is a hard limit where ATACC will make sure the flow never goes below this point. It is recommended that you set this to match the default flow. The kickoff flow is a flow target that ATACC will briefly regulate to when it comes into active mode for the very first time. It simply acts as a way to smoothen the transition when the still very first boils and the temperature shoots up. This number should be below the flow that ATACC normally has when regulating at its target temperature, while also being above the default flow. The temperature aggression is a number that multiplies how large a correction is. For example, if ATACC decides it needs to make a correction and reduce flow by a value of 2, if the aggression is set to 1, then the correction will stay at 2. But if the aggression is set to 1.5, then the correction will be 3. Or if the aggression is set to 0.5, then the correction will have a value of 1. Flow aggression is the same thing. ATACC will check what the target flow is and compare it to the actual flow. It will make corrections based on the difference between the target and actual. This flow aggression simply multiplies that correction. Adjustment speed represents how much time needs to pass before ATACC will check the target and actual temperatures and see if a correction needs to be made. The smaller you make this number, the more responsive ATACC gets, but it also gets less stable and prone to overcorrections. The larger you make the number, the more stable it will be, but slower to react to changes. If ATACC is overcorrecting itself and it's resulting in the temperature constantly overshooting and then undershooting, you should increase this number. Keep in mind this number only affects the temperature corrections. Flow corrections currently happen at a fixed rate of once every second. The 3 Steinhardt values only need to be changed if you are using a custom thermal probe. ATACC is compatible with any analog thermistor as long as it has a voltage of 3.3 volts. When buying your custom thermistor, it should come with some sort of documentation that says what its Steinhardt values are. Simply put those values in here, and you are good to go. If you are using the thermal probe that comes with the ATACC unit, then you will never have to change these ever. Flow pulse count is a value that calibrates the flow sensor within the ATACC unit. It only needs to be changed when using ATACC with an upcoming add-on. It will be explained when that releases. For now, do not touch it. Force toggle operational status is a switch that will simply force ATACC to go from standby mode to active mode, even if the wake-up temperature has not been met. This typically isn't used. The temperature alpha determines how smooth and stable the thermal probe reports its temperature to ATACC. The temperature is averaged to create a smooth reading and will filter out any anomalies or false readings caused by electromagnetic interference. The lower you make this number, the stronger the smoothing effect will be. The larger you make this number, the less filtered, but also more responsive it will be. The flow alpha is the same thing as the temperature alpha, except it affects the flow sensor instead of the temperature sensor. I would also like to mention that the ATACC software will continue to receive updates over time. These updates may include additional features and new settings to play with. This concludes this part in the ATACC series. I wish you the best, and as always, happy distilling from MIG Dynamics.